Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to present my paper as part of the Ontario International Development Agency, the 21st International Conference on Sustainable Development. I am Rajeev, the primary author of this paper. I am a PhD research scholar and assistant professor at the Department of Planning, School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, Government of India. And today I'm presenting my paper with reference number 024 titled Assessment of Future Environmental Carrying Capacity for Sustainable Development in Kochi City, Kerala State, India. This paper I have co-authored with Dr. Adinarayanane and Dr. Ayon Kumar Tarafdar, both from the School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. This study, which I'm presenting, is rooted in the pressing need to integrate environmental thresholds into spatial planning, particularly in fast-growing urban areas like Cochin, which are experiencing intensified environmental pressures due to rapid urbanization. So before we proceed, I would like to introduce the concept of environmental carrying capacity, or ECC, the central focus of this study. So environmental carrying capacity refers to the maximum upper limit of population and activities an environment can support towards achieving sustainable urban growth. So with increased urbanization, it brings in a lot of increased resource consumption in the context of developing and underdeveloped countries. And with this increased resource consumption, it brings with it environmental degradation. And when this is left unplanned, it leads to a very negative scenario. So cities are generally considered to be growth engines, but this growth bereft of environmental concern in itself is self-defeating. So we have understood that with the increasing global urban population, which is projected to reach 68% by 2050, the projections show, up from 56% in 2021, the pressure on the urban ecosystems have intensified. The demographic transition in India is also exemplified, where urbanization can possibly surge from 31% in 2011 to a projected 40.8% by 2030. Kerala, amongst the states of India, have shown a highest urban growth rate, where urban population has doubled from 26% in 2001 to 47.7% in 2011. And as already discussed, there is negative implication of urbanization on the environment, reflected through increased resource consumption of water, energy, land, leading to urban land scarcity by accumulating to a growing population, and the ever increasing urban footprint, always at a concern with the limited biocapacity. So when it comes to the developed versus the developing scenario, developed nations have historically integrated carrying capacity assessments into land use planning, EIA, and urban policy frameworks, thus achieving better control over resource consumption and waste assimilation. In contrast, the integration of environmental carrying capacity in developing nations remain nascent due to data constraints and short-term growth priorities. So, as part of this research, we have carried out an extensive literature review on the concept and the development of the notion of environmental carrying capacity, which has started from a mere ecological concept where simple biophysical metrics were discussed to a framework which integrated human environmental feedbacks, resilience as a concept, and now a modern stage at which it is quite dynamic, cohesive, and spatial in its concern. As part of the literature review, the authors have also went through different ECC methodologies, the indicator selection environmental carrying capacity estimation, the spatial resolution at which environmental carrying capacity is discussed, the contextual relevance of environmental carrying capacity, especially in the South Asian cities context, and the statistical rigor. So based on this, the research focus have been derived, and the research focus clearly points to the fact that there is less discussion on the production capability of the environment, less discussion on the quantification of the natural environment, specifically in planning studies, and also the concept of sensitivity, vulnerability, etc. is discussed less. And all the more such studies becomes important in areas which are having significant geographical constraints like areas having wetlands, islands, coastal zones, etc. So thus, the paper tries to assess the future environmental carrying capacity comprehensively by integrating ecological, physical, and socioeconomic dimensions. This research intends to evaluate the future environmental carrying capacity of Cochin using spatial analysis, integrating environmental sensitivity, hazard vulnerability, development intensity, and ecological capacity, such as the supportive carrying capacity and the assimilative capacity. Also, the research intends to apply geospatial tools and statistical models like the GWR to estimate future environmental carrying capacity more precisely at local levels across space, thus offering decision makers to an actionable framework. Also, the research aims to contextualize ECC within the dynamic urban transformation in the context of Cochin as part of this paper and contribute to embedding sustainability within planning practice in India. So, as part of this study, the research progressed by collecting data under various urban subsystems, then trying to identify the urban environmental interactions, further defining what is the environmental pressure, what is the current environmental state, and the environmental response mechanisms. Further, based on the data that has been collected, the spatial indicators have been input, including the LULC change, the NDVI, the NDWI, then the five dimensions of ecological sensitivity, hazard vulnerability, development intensity, supportive capacity, and the assimilative capacity. The inputs have been normalized to a common scale, and the weights have been derived via the AHP process. And the weighted overlay was done in GIS, which led to the quantification of a proxy environmental carrying capacity for Cochin. Further, it has been done through a GWR model calibration to have local context specific ECC values. So, as part of the study, the authors have went through multiple papers to finalize upon 27 indicators, broadly clubbed and classified under five dimensions of development intensity, ecological sensitivity, hazard vulnerability, environmental assimilative capacity, environmental supportive capacity, under the heads of environmental pressure, environmental state, and environmental response. Coming to the context background of case area in Cochin, Kochi is a metropolitan city as a part of the Vembanad coal backwater estuarine system. It is a rapidly evolving metropolitan area and has India's flagship programs of Smart City, Amrit initiatives, etc., the various development programs, which is accelerating in infrastructure development and urban land conversion at a fast rate in the city. The study area spans across an area of 230.3 square kilometers, having a population of 9 lakh approximately as per 2011 census. This coastal region of Cochin, which has been earmarked, has a municipal corporation having 74 wards as well as 11 village local bodies or gram panchayats. But given this dense population and the coastal vulnerability, integrating environmental carrying capacity framework into the spatial planning process becomes essential. The recent master plan of Cochin 2040 has not integrated ECC significantly, although analysis in this regard has been carried out. It has not been integrated into the planning framework. As part of studying the state of environment in Cochin, the authors have used image reclassification to derive the land use land cover and the land use land cover change in Cochin, and it indicates a significant decline in the ecological and the wetland constituents in Cochin and a significant increase, a spike in the built up area in Cochin. Similar is the condition when it comes to NDVI and NDWI, both indicating a decline in the green area density and a decline in the water coverage. Notably, the water coverage decline has been 15% in 10 years. So that brings us to the dimension of ecological sensitivity, which is part of mapping the environmental state in Cochin. The parameters considered include land use land cover, NDVI, NDWI, slope, groundwater depth, presence of eco-sensitive area, proximity to the coast, proximity to the roads, and proximity to the buildup. So, using these parameters, the ecological sensitivity has been quantified, and 41% of the total study area is ecologically rich, or in other words, ecologically sensitive. Uh, when it comes to hazard vulnerability, the next parameter under environmental state, the parameters considered include geomorphology, flood susceptibility, coastal erosion, All three quantified based on other data which the authors have collected as part of the data collection. Historical data of the hazard affected area, drainage density, salinity, TWI, and population concentration. The next dimension was environmental pressure or development intensity through the parameters of population density, build density, road density, land use concentration, nightlife intensity, and the community needs index. A high development intensity negatively interacts with eco-sensitivity, hazard vulnerability, assimilative capacity, and supportive capacity. The next is the environment response mechanism captured through the assimilative capacities and the supportive capacity of the environment, quantified using the parameters of carbon sequestration potential using INVEST, composite pollution load, which has been quantified based on the pollution data sets that has been collected, the developable land availability, green space availability, and the groundwater potential. So the logic adopted was that the higher the ecological richness or the higher the vulnerability, the lower is the environmental carrying capacity, and the higher the resource supportive capacity and the assimilative capacity, the higher is the ECC. The ECC shows a bell-shaped curved interaction with the development intensity. So thereby, the authors developed an evaluation index system and further tried to estimate the ECC using the formulae, a summation of the weights multiplied by the dimension value. And here we have used uniform weights as well as AHP derived weights, and the proxy ECC was derived. The proxy ECC was still very generic to make it very context specific and not just global. To accurately reflect the spatial heterogeneity and the local variation and the influencing parameters. The geographical weighted regression was applied to provide a dynamic and location-specific future environmental carrying capacity estimation. So here we have tried to map the local coefficients to understand the spatial patterns, and these are the scatter plots of the bivariate Moran's eye, showing the spatial correlation of the environmental carrying capacity with each one of these dimensions. So the final output that we have got, which is the future environmental carrying capacity of Cochin, is depicted here. So the results range from zero point 0.2 to 1.24 environmental carrying capacity. That is, if we interpret in terms of development, it is showing areas with highly environmentally stressed regions to environmentally strong or resilient regions. So the possible planning implication that we can see here is that we have zones of, or we can identify using ECC zones of development restrictions, regulated zones where only low impact uses can be there, balanced development zones, zones for planned densification, as well as zones where we can promote green development. And the same, using an approach, we can try to integrate into the planning process. And this is a depiction of how the output can be utilized. So this is a snip from the development concept which is developed as part of the Cochin Master Plan. So to guide whatever different proposals in the Cochin Master Plan or the Master Plan of any city, the environmental carrying capacity value specific to those zones can be a guiding principle. To conclude, this study presents a spatially nuanced assessment of the future environmental carrying capacity for Cochin region by integrating dimensions of ecological sensitivity, hazard vulnerability, development intensity, and assimilative and supportive capacities. Notably, the application of geographically weighted regression enabled the estimation of a spatially adaptive environmental carrying capacity, capturing the local variations and allowing for more refined and actionable planning decisions. As a way forward, it can be seen that it is essential to institutionalize the environmental carrying capacity based planning framework, which was presented 2 slides before, and incorporating them into statutory spatial plans to ensure that urban growth in cities like Cochin remains within sustainable thresholds in the long term and also enhance the quality of life in the various environmental regions. So these are the references which I have gone through, which I have incorporated as part of this paper. I thank SK Vijayawada for all the support that they have given me for doing this research. Thank you for your patience and your thoughtful listening. Thank you very much.